Hi everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on what time you're seeing this. Today we're going to be learning about ions. And our target is to determine the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons in an ion. So first things first, what exactly is an ion? An ion is simply an atom or a group of atoms that has a charge. That charge can be positive or it can be negative, kind of like a magnet. A magnet can be positive, a magnet can be negative, right? How do atoms become ions? Quite simply, they gain or lose electrons. So, and this is always a little weird for people to think about, but electrons have negative charges. So when you're gaining an electron, it's like a negative person, a toxic person is coming into your life, and so you become negative. But on the flip side, if you lose an electron, it's like you're losing a negative person in your life, and so now you're happier because of it. We scientists, we like to make really fancy words when we can. So we invented the words anion to describe negative ions and cation to describe positive ions. The way that I have, and forever will, remember this, is that a cation has a T in it. And a T looks like a plus sign, and plus means positive. Therefore, cation is positive, and by default, anion is negative. Okay, cool. So how do we actually hit today's target? How do we determine the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons in an ion? Well, to do that, we need to know the charge. And you guys may recall from our previous video that I explained this thing known as shorthand form, where the mass number is always located in the upper left, the atomic number is located in the lower left, and, get crazy, the charge is located in the upper right. Okay. And this is a fluorine ion. Fluorine typically has a negative charge, so this fluorine ion has a -1 charge. And we need to try and figure out how many protons, how many neutrons, and electrons it has. Okay, so let's start with the easy one. How many protons should this ion have? Good. You notice that its atomic number is 9, and so it has 9 protons because the atomic number is 9. Okay. So what about the neutrons? Well, we'll recall from previous lessons that the number of neutrons simply equals what? How do we find the number of neutrons? Good. We take the mass number and subtract the atomic number. So the mass number 19 minus the atomic number 9 is just 10. Ta-da! Okay. So here's the tricky part. Remember, if we have a negative charge, we're gaining electrons because it's like a negative person is entering your life. So if we have a negative charge, that means we've gained a negative electron. So how many electrons should we have? Well, if we have a -1, that means we have one more electron than protons, so 9 plus 1 is 10. Because we gained a negative electron. And that is a little tricky for some people to get, so it's okay if it takes a couple of examples for it to sink in. We're going to do a couple of examples. Cool. Speaking of a couple of examples, let's look at some. You can see the symbolic notation written in a couple of different ways. You can see it where the atomic number and the atomic mass are given, and the charge has the actual number associated with it. And sometimes you'll see symbolic notation written where the atomic number and the mass number simply are not provided. So what do you do in these situations? If we didn't have this 11 or this 23 here, what could we do? Where could we go? You guessed it, have no fear. The periodic table is here. Oh boy. There it is. Check out that atomic number and mass number. Okay. So we could just see that the atomic number is 11 and the mass number is about 23. Cool. Okay. So similarly with the charges, right? If it's just a plus in the upper corner, that just simply means +1. Scientists are lazy, so we, abbreviate things where we can. If you see a minus sign, that just means -1. And if it has a multiple charge, like a +2 charge, it will always say +2. It'll never just be plus. It will either be plus or plus followed by a number. And if it's just a plus, it means 1. Okay, so how many protons, neutrons, and electrons does this sodium atom have? Well, let's start with the easy ones. Protons, it has 11. And neutrons, it's just 23 minus 11, or 12. There we go. But what about the electrons? How many electrons does this ion have? So remember, because it has a positive charge, it's like it's happier now. And it's happier because it got rid of a negative person. A negative electron just left its life. So that means it has one more positive proton than it has electrons. It has 10 electrons. A great way to double check your work is to just simply subtract the number of protons minus the electrons. 11 protons minus 10 electrons is positive 1. And it works for negative charges too. If we go back to this previous problem, 9 protons minus 10 electrons is negative 1. So protons minus electrons always equals the charge. That's a useful little trick that you can do to double check your work and just make sure you're doing these problems correctly. Okay. Ooh. So this one is kind of interesting because this is both an ion and an isotope. Can you guys determine the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons for chlorine 37? Good luck. Okay. The easiest one here is the number of protons. 17, right? The atomic number always equals the number of protons. And the number of neutrons, well, that's pretty easy too. That's just the mass number minus the number of protons. The electrons are kind of the hard one. So remember, it's got a negative charge. That's like a negative person has just come into its life. So it has an extra negative person. It had 17, but now that it has an extra one, it has 18. And we can double check that by just doing 17 minus 18 equals negative 1. Cool. Let's try one more problem. You will need a periodic table to solve this problem. You'll notice I didn't give you an atomic number or a mass number. I just gave you the charge. So using your periodic table, calculate the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Good luck. Okay, so you really can't do this problem without the periodic table, so let's go ahead and find aluminum in our periodic table. Here it is. Aluminum has an atomic number of 13. That means it's got 13 protons. Okay, and its average atomic mass is 26.982, which is almost 27. So 27 is our mass number. 27 minus 13 is 14. There we go. And last but not least, we need to figure out the number of electrons this atom would have. So it's got a +3 charge. That's basically like saying 3 negative people left its life, making it 3 happier, right? If you kind of get the metaphor there. So if 3 negative electrons left it, that means it has a total number of 10 remaining. It started with 13, 3 negative electrons left, so now it's only got 10. And we can double check our work. 13 minus 10 equals 3. We will be doing just a little bit of review on ions and isotopes in class on Wednesday, and then we will be having our test. You will need to be able to determine the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons of regular atoms, isotopes, and ions, and also understand what those things mean and how they are, related to the periodic table. Stay tuned for more. I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Bye for now.